Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast. If you're looking for somewhere where a bunch of blokes are going to shout and scream and call for the manager's head, the board's head, and just complain about everything, you're in the wrong spot. So we're going to try, we're going to give you what we believe is an assessment of Tottenham's performance against Arsenal and an assessment of where we are as a club, which takes into account several factors that are contributing to it and why there is still reasons for positivity and hope and optimism, but why there are some reasons why we should, talk about areas we can make improvements on and ensure we learn from mistakes as a football club and our manager, adjustments they could make to help take us forward more quickly. So, look, guys, we'll start with the match itself, shall we, before we jump into the questions from our listeners and our members, which we've got. So the general performance of a North London derby, I mean, on paper, 2-1 away loss doesn't look too... Loss is always bad, someone will be shouting.
Yeah.
But a 2-1 away loss to, let's face it, a better side didn't seem too bad. But you had feelings about the performance, though, that, you maybe felt that might flatten us a bit. Is that fair?
I think, I was having a chat with a couple of guys at work. One of them's an Arsenal fan, and it's never easy. But he's quite a balanced Arsenal fan in some ways. You can actually have a discussion with him. And I said that I felt that was a comfortable 2-1 win for them, and they never looked like they were in any major trouble. Even when we scored, it was against a run of play. If you look at the flow of the game, Arsenal's the swing was to Arsenal for most of the game. We were rarely in the ascendancy. The first half they did so well at pushing us back into, especially our left back corner. It seemed like we were playing the whole game in the left back corner in that first half. And then second half, they backed off a bit, let us play, but they let us play where they wanted us to play. And they're a really, really good defensive side. And they gave us little or no chance. Okay, if Porro would have snuck that one right at the end that hit the post, then they would have felt like a proper injustice. But it never felt like we had a foothold in the game. It always felt to me like we were playing right on the edge of our stretching and never had it in control, whereas Arsenal seemed to be playing within themselves quite a lot. And I think, as Ange said, we just didn't have the pace, we didn't have the tempo, and they outmuscled us and outfought us in the middle of the park. It seemed at times that they had acres of space and we couldn't seem to find any space. And I think when we were doing the watch along last night, that's sort of how it felt, I think, Jim, didn't you?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some defence I have in the way we set up. There's a bit of kind of, yes, it was easy for us. It didn't feel like we were ever kind of, you can tell in games when you feel like you're coming back and there's a chance of getting an equaliser. You feel the momentum, you feel it in the atmosphere, you feel it in the energy of the players, but it just didn't feel like it was coming.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, I completely see what you mean. I think Arsenal, and you mentioned it before we started and just then, is they almost let us they also felt that confidence that we weren't going to really offer a meaningful threat and it was time they could rest up a little bit. That's how it felt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel it was probably the second best squad in the league versus the 8th best squad in the league based on not having a centre-backs. Excuse. Probably the 12th squad right now in the league. And it felt like, you know what, you'd say if you were a mid-table side, you'd be going, decent performance, we nearly nicked something at the Emirates. But this is the North London derby, so that's just not an acceptable position that you can really swallow as a fan. And I don't like the word acceptable because it kind of means like, you can't just ignore the facts and say it's unacceptable because I can't handle the emotion of the situation. But as a fan, I can't in my heart say I'm content with it just being the fact Arsenal better than us. I expect Spurs to be flying all guns blazing until the final minute against Arsenal. Even if we lose 5-1, I want every player running through walls, causing chaos. But Deej, over to you, my friend. What did you make of the performance? And can you also let us know what you make of those half-time changes, whether you think how Ange adjusted the game? Did it make a difference? And were those things what you would have done?
I don't know. It's so hard because I think we've been painted into a corner in a sense tactically because of our right side. And I think that's kind of why we play Kulusevski on the right instead of playing him more centrally, where I think he's been really good. And then we kind of stopped playing him there. But realistically, I think the reason we stopped playing him there is because I think he thought we needed some like bolster and like actually like being able to keep possession on that side, because otherwise it's just Brennan Johnson, Pedro Porro, and Dragusin, and those players aren't our strongest in possession. I think Porro has like lost the ball more than anyone else in the Prem this season, if I
In
remember
Europe,
that
I think.
correctly. Yeah. But I don't know. It's just it's so hard. Like there's a reason we were in our back left corner, because every time the ball went on the right side, we just lost it. At least we could keep it in the back left, and that's not necessarily the fault of any one player. It's just honestly, it's a swing and a miss on Dragusin, at least in the current moment. He obviously center backs can take longer to develop, so I'm not necessarily saying we bit him off in the summer, but I don't think that he's built to play in an Ange style role at the moment. He's just not comfortable enough on the ball. He doesn't have an expansive enough passing range, and I think Porro is built to be a wingback. I mean, that's what we bought him for. We bought him under Conte when we were playing a back three, when we didn't really need to do any defensive work. And he still kind of feels like he's still playing that role. And some of that is on the manager, and some of that is on just a player relying on their natural instincts. And when a player's instinct is to be forward as much as possible, like Porro is, of course we're going to be caught out on that right hand side. And I mean that's I swear like 70% of our goals have either been started because the right flank has been completely abandoned, or someone has come in and been unmarked on the back post if we're coming down the left. And so it's just, I don't know. I think that's the part of the game that I was more disappointed with than anything else. I think the halftime changes, you got to do something. We obviously weren't looking great. Though to be fair, outside of a 4-minute stretch, Arsenal had a lot of possession, but outside of set pieces, I was never really worried they would score from open play outside of maybe like a chance or two.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it sucks because we played poorly, but I think part of the reason I think it feels like we played poorer than we did is that we were trying to not just all out attack, which I think you can see we did. Outside of my guess is that their open play XG is pretty low. I've seen their overall number. It's like 1.5, which is about where you expect when you concede 2 goals.
0.95 or something.
Yeah, so it's not like we got hounded. I think we probably put on one of our better defensive performances with this back line. And I don't know, like you've got a 21-year-old goalkeeper who's hasn't played a league game, and his first league game is the North London Derby. You've got Dragusin, who can't play on the ball, and every team's strategy at this point is just wait for him to touch the ball and then trigger a press. And it'll either go out to Porro, who will then they'll also pass him, which is probably part of the reason he's lost the ball so much, is that's like he's not benefiting from Dragusin kind of throwing him a hospital pass to use an American football term. But it's just so easy to game plan against a team that wants to build out from the back when you can't build out from one half of the back.
So you were trying to say something there, we?
Yeah, I've sort of lost my train of thought there a little bit, but it just seemed that we had, so coming back to the two XG numbers, I think that XG tells part of a story, but it doesn't tell the whole story all the time, because I think if you then you took the eye test in terms of the build-up and the potential chances to be created, Arsenal looked way more dangerous coming forward, and a decent final ball at times would have ended up in a high XG shot being taken, but we maybe just got a block in, we maybe the pass wasn't quite from them. So I think they looked far more dangerous than we did going forward. Whereas when we went forward, we actually got some half-decent chances that we didn't take, even though our build-up play didn't make us look as fluid and as open as what Arsenal did when they came forward. So I think you've probably got to look at some of the other stats to really get the true picture of the game. So in terms of goal chances, yes, the XG tells a story, but I don't think it tells the story of the build-up play and how dangerous Arsenal did look when they were pressing us and coming forward.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say that we were the better team. I'm not trying to say we were even. I think that we probably deserved this loss. I think that while that's true that we did open ourselves up to more consistently dangerous attacks, I think that did happen, but I think we did, the one thing I think we did do well is, with the exception of the goal, I think we did mitigate the dangerous counters that we're kind of known for at this point. So what, and like, I feel like those kind of dangerous, the ones where like, it's kind of like a hindsight thing, because like even in the game we won 4-0 versus City had like 20-something shots. Like a couple more of those go in, and we're talking about how we were asking for it. We were setting up for failure. They just didn't go in. So I feel like it's at some point that's just kind of the nature of the game.
Well, the other statistics of the game, they kind of show quite an even matchup, really. More even than you expected. Possession was 53% to Arsenal. Well, to me, it felt like 70% to Arsenal.
It felt like more.
It felt like more. The passing accuracy, we actually had a higher passing accuracy, and we strung 342 passes together versus their 370. So, surprisingly, that those stats there are saying that we did manage to string a decent number of passes together, as many as they did. We held a similar amount of possession. In terms of shots on target, we only had 2, they only had 4. 10 shots to their 14. So again, you're pretty equal. And we made, out of the 4 shots, Kinski saved 3 of them. But we only had 2 shots on target the whole. We only forced them into two saves rather all game. So it does feel a bit like these kind of games. I find like if that corner wasn't given and we finished 1-1, the narrative would be we kept Arsenal at bay, reduced the amount of chances they could get against us. That was finally a mature performance. Ange adapted. He put 3 in midfield. How sensible. It worked. Good teams find ways of getting through these games even when they're against the cosh. But I find when you lose in football, my experience of following it over my life has been the narrative is completely dictated by the result.
Of course.
It's never dictated by the actual reality of performance, because all those underlying stats can't add points to the board. The only thing that can add points to the board is whether you win or draw. So no one cares. But it just feels like this whole season, it's been like the games where we should have won, we didn't. And some of those times it was almost like out of our control. It just didn't go our way, but we're like, okay, we'll dust ourselves off. The good fortune will come the other way. And games like today, it just didn't. You feel like if you were Chelsea, that ends 2-1. Oh, 1-1, sorry. Because of Tottenham.
I know the corner wasn't a corner, and we can't hang the fact that we lost that game just based on a bad decision for the corner. However, we called it on the watch along, didn't we? Just before that corner, actually, that one of the failings of Tottenham this season has been the lack of concentration between the 40th and the 45th minute. We've, the Liverpool game, we just got back into the game, and then we go and, when we got done the 6-3, we got to 2-1, and then we got to 2-1, and then they scored just before half time to make it 3-1 at half time, didn't they? In the 6-3 game, and there's been a couple of ones where we just lose concentration. So you got to say, if that corner wasn't given, which it absolutely shouldn't have done, do we hang on to half time at 1-0? Is that then a different mentality when we come out for the second half? Arsenal have got to still go for it hard in the second half. They're not 2-1 up. There's a different set of circumstances. But we can't seem to hold our concentration for long periods of time. We switch off.
But what makes it even more frustrating is these small lapses have such big implications, because we've only lost once by more than a goal. And our goal difference is just, it doesn't add up to the league table position. It just doesn't make sense. We're on plus 14, and the team ahead of us is on minus 11. Now, so they're on minus 14 and we're plus 11, West Ham. That shows that with, 25 goal swing there in our favour, that is insane. Like, you've got, I know people's counter to that is, we smash certain teams and we can't score easily against better defensive teams. But my kind of counter to that is, that's the same for everyone. And by the way, we did smash 4 past Man City and Man United, we cream. But it's perfectly normal that every club scores a lot more goals against teams in the bottom 10 than they do in the top 3 or 4. But we're still scoring against teams in the top 3 or just 1 or 2, which adds up to the fact that teams in the top 3 or 4, you look how many they've conceded, they concede on average 1 goal a game or slightly less. So when you're scoring 1 or 2 goals per game against them, that's normal. I don't know, but am I being biased here? There's some logical reason why our goal difference is so good and we are 13th.
No, not really. I mean, if you showed basically all of our underlying numbers to someone without a table in the picture, like a point total, and you asked them to guess where we would be, I would say probably 5th, 6th, somewhere around there. I mean, our stats are all good. We just lose games, and I don't know. Some of it is just. Some of it can be down to tactics. Some of it's down to individual players. Some of it's just down to luck. This game is inherently about. I keep saying this. This game is about a number of individually low probability outcomes, and sometimes it happens. Like like the goal to the one that I think of when I'm thinking about this, when I'm talking about this, is generally the Galatasaray's first goal, where the guy just has the ball back to goal outside the 18, just turns around, hits the ball, prays, and it goes directly into the top corner. There's nothing you can do to tactic that out. That just happens. That's the nature of the game. It happens sometimes. That's why the game is so much fun to watch. If the game was won based on who had more XG, we wouldn't care. City would win the league every year. I mean, I guess it kind of do anyway, but like there would be no reason to watch the games if these low probability things didn't have a chance to swing outcomes. It's just we're on the receiving end of a lot of these chances that end up costing us games. And yes, some of that is due to us giving up relatively higher percentage chance outcomes with these like open counters or leaving the back post open all the time. Like these are things that are costing us games, but I don't know. I don't think that we I think that
Oh God, sorry, Dejan. I think coming back to your point, Jim, there is an element though that if you look at the games that we've won in all competitions this year, we've won 10 games. And in those 10 games, we've won 10 games, and in those 10 games, we've scored more than 2 goals every time. So it's three goals or more in those games where we've won handsomely. So that artificially boosts your goals for. And it's across the board. And then we're not nicking the tight games. Now, whether that's because whether the narrative is we can't break teams down or whatever, there's times where we just don't take our big chances. There's times when we're super clinical, and there's times where we miss a bundle of big chances in those games. So some games we're really clinical, some games we're not clinical. So the goal difference is a bit of a mask to the overall performance, I think.
This is where I push back on it a bit, though. It's if you look at any team over the season, their goal difference is largely influenced by a few massive results. Liverpool scoring 6 against us. Man City have won games against Port. Was it open? They've all got these results. Who was it? Anyway, I have to look at their result. But all I'm saying is all these teams, you have results and you go, wow, like Haaland scores 4 goals in a game and blah, blah. Yeah. And then they go to Arsenal and it's a 1-0. I think the difference is, like you're saying their side, it's not that if we're still scoring the same number of goals consistently as they do, we go to Arsenal, we still get 2. We play Liverpool, we still get 3. The difference is those other clubs keep them to 1 goal or less when they concede. So they come out with a point or a win. But we need to go that extra goal further to secure the result because partly because of how we set up, the way we play, but partly
Yeah.
because we have got an 18-year-old central midfielder whose heading stats are in the lowest percentile, but he's not a centre-back, and Dragusin, who's not set up the system and he's not played out of choice, to be fair here, and Pedro Porro, who leaves space everywhere. There's multiple reasons why. But did you made a concert?
I think that our issue isn't even necessarily with the big clubs. Like we could, the issue with these like the thing is that these games and this like confused like this anger towards like these specific games, like the losing to the Liverpools, losing to the Arsenals, losing to I don't know someone else, the other large clubs. I think that these are. I don't think. Obviously, you never want to lose to anybody, but I think that the anger at these losses aren't being informed by other losses to big clubs. These are still being informed by our losses to Ipswich, by our loss to Crystal Palace. The problem isn't that we're not scoring against big clubs. The problem is that we haven't been able to consistently break down low block teams.
Yep.
And then the way that we play against low block teams is so aggressive that we open ourselves up to one or two really good chances a game. And if you're a team like that who's like not like, an underdog going into the game, you're obviously going to take, I would take 2-3 good chances in a game and sitting back and defending the rest of the time.
Wolves, for example, that was the 2-2 where we gave away that last ditch goal. And that's to a T what you've described there, dude.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. That's the analysis, conclusion we've come to. We've solved it. But we haven't solved. We've explained the best we can why we think that is. But this is the solution, and we'll go to the questions after this. Is the solution? Because in my head, I was thinking, right, the solution to this is, and the reason for this isn't how many we're conceding. It's not being able to put these games to bed by scoring that extra goal. And I look at the attackers we went into the season with, Werner, Son, and when you hear Son, you go, Son, it's human Son. Of course he could. Well, kind of. Let's not compare 33-year-old Son, 32-year-old Son
sunsetting, innit?
Sunsetting. This is sunsetting. Well, so it's like,
we've had the midday sun.
Wonderful guy, still got value in the squad, etc. Not a natural winger for this role, blah, 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 all that stuff. Anyway, your attacking options are Son, Werner, Johnson, Mikey Moore, and that's it.
Solanke.
Yeah, and Solanke's a striker. And Richarlison. That doesn't scream to me like a set of options, even when everyone's fit, that you can think, right, I'm consistently going to get enough output from that.
So what about, how do you go with the 7 games that we've won in the league then? We've scored 3 goals in 6 of them.
Well,
because there's goals in that squad.
The counter to that is we've scored the second most goals in the league. So that completely
so there's
debunks.
goals in there, right?
So you either say, yes, those players are rubbish. And this is where we go in proverbial arguments, people. They go, those players suck. And you go, okay, they're rubbish. Then surely Ange is doing a great job of making those lot the second highest scoring outfit in the Premier League. No, he's not. He's rubbish. You're conceding too many goals. Statistically, we're not actually conceding loads. Like when we got a centre back, we actually got quite a good defence. There's always seems to be a counter to the argument, and all the numbers seem to always point to us we shouldn't be where we are. It just makes it.
But guess what?
We are.
Yeah,
guess what we are.
I mean, this kind of comes back to what I was talking about, though. Like the goal that Larson scored against us when we drew with Wolves. That is a goal that a striker has taken at least once a match for probably every match in history, and that goes in once or twice a month. Like those are not goal like that near post top corner goal just doesn't go in. Like he wasn't balanced. It was an off balance shot. He just kind of really just swung and it went in. Like that's the nature of the game sometimes.
It's like the analogy for me would be like, if you ever once played like blackjack or something, you could be sitting next to someone who's never played before. And I used to imagine them going to Vegas at work next week, right? I've been there before where I've gotten you get these little packs and they teach you, because it's just a game of odds and you can learn it off by heart what the best odd is by every time it's your turn. You know the best odds. I could play it perfectly with a cheap pack of cards. And some of them let you bring in the cheat card. I'm doing it perfectly every time. Some drunk chump comes up next to me, no idea what he's doing, picking the lowest on options, and he's raking it in. He's having a great night. He's making tons of money. And I'm going, why am I losing every hand and you're winning every hand? Statistically, I'm doing all the right stuff and you're doing all the wrong stuff. We should both be losing, but you should be losing faster. Why are you winning and I'm losing? And sport is similar in the sense that you can't control the fine margins enough, and they can wildly swing. I think when Leicester won the title, that was an example of, for a whole season, you just couldn't get out of that. How have they done it again? Just everything falling possibly their way. And we don't want to go too much to that, but we know that everyone got a bit excited by it. There was some unconscious bias from refs and all that kind of stuff that played into it. But you do need that, maybe.
But statistically, over a period of time, those things level themselves out because it falls into a standard. It does. It falls into a standard probability. It really does. It really does. And these things lie on the edges of the bell curve and your standard deviation. If you look at it holistically, honestly, it does. Because otherwise, stats aren't stats, right?
So yeah, but that's why the game's exciting, though, right?
Yeah, but
that's
why is it
stats?
But then, so therefore, you then have to ask the question: why are we on the receiving end of everything that's outside the standard deviation?
Well, we
can't just be that unlucky.
No.
I mean, we can.
Well, you can, but it's not.
If you look at all of those instances, and we get proportionally more of those against us, why?
Yeah, but I think we discussed. Yeah.
That doesn't work. Statistically, that doesn't work.
Well,
either we're doing something that allows that to happen, or we break every statistical model in the world.
Well, there's other elements, right? We know it's fatigue leads to more mistakes.
Yeah.
And
that is
right.
something that might actually lead to those type of things happening against us. And where does the fatigue come from? Not being able to rotate. Where does that come from? Injuries. Where does that come from?
Not having a good enough squad.
Not having a good enough squad. Where does that come from? Or where do the injuries come from? The medical team might not be up to scratch. Why do we get so many hamstring injuries? Because of the style of play. Is the training too much? All of that.
Like 10 things.
So it's not one thing. People are looking for a silver bullet and there isn't one.
No,
because it's a system and it's complex, and different parts of the system have unintended consequences in other parts of the system.
But it's a bit like a finely tuned car. Like, I find like Ange's system, it's like everything needs to work for it to work. You don't have as much room for error. It's less forgiving, but a bit like a supercar. When it does work, you're faster than everyone else and no one can get near you. Whereas some clubs build their model around, let's just be consistent. Let's always put a 7 out of 10. We'll pick up some points, enough to get this. Yeah. We've gone for a model where, look, this is going to be risky at times, but once it clicks into gear, we're going to blow everyone away and win a lot.
Yeah,
we're experiencing what happens when bits start to fall off. And it's fun.
I think it was Jack Pickbrook on the View from the Lane sort of used the analogy that Ange's system is a little bit of a house of cards, because when it's perfect, it's wonderful and it looks brilliant. But if you take one card away, it really destabilizes the whole tower.
That's it. And to keep the tower stable, you need a big, good squad that ensures you are building it on good foundations. Yeah. And it's not his fault, but we're not in a position where we have that squad. And,
I would argue that any squad who loses their both center backs and goalkeeper would not be on level ground, regardless.
That's a really fair comment.
That's true.
Yeah, I think any team in the world but City. I think just City, and even City's struggling without Rodri. Yeah. But like, I'm thinking of I don't think that there's a team in the world that has four Premier League quality center backs and a backup goalie who is.
And you throw into the mix, we've had 3 keepers this year, 2 left backs this year. I think I read somewhere or heard somewhere today that we've had 5 different back 5 combinations this season.
I'm not
crazy
it's that low, honestly. to me.
Might have been more, but it was a ridiculous amount of across the season of interchanging that back five. And for us, I think the injury thing is not just injuries; it's injuries in one part of the pitch. It's injuries in that back in that back five, or problems in that back five. You could maybe get by if you had this many injuries and it was spread across.
Yeah, if you lose like a center back, you lose you lose a wing back, you lose one midfielder, you lose
exactly
a striker.
But you lose your ball playing centre half. To DJ's point, you lose your right-footed ball playing centre half. The whole of your right side of the pitch is out if your right-hand player can't play, and you open yourself up down the left, and then they know to squeeze in because your out ball on the right is opening you up every time.
Yeah. Well, Deej made that good comment before the pod on that topic, by the way. I liked it. We need a right back more than we need a left back.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with him, having thought about it. Like that you don't I don't look at games and think, whoa, we're exposed to left back. I always think we're exposed to right.
I mean, the question is whether you think Spence is a starting caliber, whether you think Spence is better at right back or left back, realistically. Yeah. And if he is more comfortable at the right back, then I think getting us a left back is more important. I also do want to put a little bit of a disclaimer that I do think it is, like I said, I think I said it a little bit earlier, but I want to make it very clear. It's a little bit unfair on Porro to be put in the position in possession that he is as consistently as he is. I think he is given an impossible task by dealing with, well, before it was Dragusin and Forster basically were his 2 points of contact from the
so he's a victim of the injuries and when you have those injuries there, the system makes it much more difficult. There's a knock on, like we said, a house of cards. The next card is him.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I haven't seen him at right back. He played right back a lot at Forest, didn't he? That was his season at Forest. He was the regular right back at Forest, and he got plaudits there. I think, right? Did you see him much there, Deej, or not?
I've just heard things like when I was like what I've just heard from different reports and reading Twitter. So take everything with a grain of salt. But that he is more comfortable as a right back than a left back. So I don't think you would tell based on how he plays left back. I think he was one of him, Bergvall, and Gray were the three bright spots for me in that game.
Agreed.
Imagine telling someone that coming into the season.
Well, there were loads of positives, weirdly, in this form of young talents coming through that game. Again, the trajectory of these guys you just mentioned there is insane. The improvement levels we're seeing from Bergvall. And there's something that really bugged me with the narrative after that game, and that was that Kinski was rattled. I saw a young player who was like licking his lips, loving it, like loving every minute. He made his mistake and didn't seem to care. I felt like he was so brave in everything he did. I just didn't see a player that was rattled. I just saw a player who's learning how his teammates play, where they are, and playing the disjointed side with loads of players out of position. But he was brilliant.
That flick that he did.
Yeah.
I think I'll take the 2-1 loss just for the flick. I'll take it for that. Yeah. That's And he came out and he claimed balls, he punched balls, he was much more dominant in his area, I think, than Forster is. And Forster's 6'7". Forster doesn't like to come beyond the 6-yard box too much, does he?
Yeah.
I think Kinski played well, despite, I think he probably could have done better for the goal, obviously. But
it's one of those ones where it wasn't hard enough to stay off the ground all the way to the goal, and it bounced just in front of his hand. And it went. I think his thumb touched it. Yeah. If it was travelling true, I think he would have got his hand to it, and it just bounced in front of him and took it over the hand. But Bissouma's got to put his hands up for that one, hasn't he?
He does, and again, this is where it keeps coming back to. It's the boring reality that it's typically a knock-on effect from a mistake that puts another player into a difficult position. And there was an article that it did. At first reading, I think the title is misleading of the article because it was, again, hate's a strong word. I find it poorly educated and it puts a negative connotation on a paper that starts with naive Ange every time. When they click, you just instantly think you clearly haven't watched that game, because what you're insinuating is we threw 11 men up onto the halfway line and tried to outscore Arsenal, and that was so the opposite. He's literally set up in a way that you said as the media he should be setting up, and then you go naive. I'm like, that is just such a poor take. But they did make the point of, somewhere there's one bit I did agree with, which was, it just feels like Ange's players are just forever making these mistakes. And at some time, you're going to have to say, is it because the players aren't good enough that they're constantly making mistakes? Is it that he's not coaching the system into them well enough? Or is it the system itself? And again, I think when we're coming to this, it's probably a mix. Like we said, it would, with really good players, that system worked perfectly. If you have Man City squad, I think Ange wins the league with Man City. With Spurs, sorry, he put their squad into ours. But I don't think you win the league with Man City's players playing with Eddie Howe as your manager, even though he's a fantastic manager for getting the most out of those Newcastle squads players. But equally, if you take 4 key players out of Pep Guardiola's system, they implode like we do. They did implode, lost 5 in a row. Whereas an Eddie Howe would go, I'm going to steady the ship and I'll still find a way of getting you to 4. You know what I mean? And keeping some consistency going. I just feel that's the pros and the cons of the way who we are, mate. The least Aussie mates there ever.
Yeah, but even like the same thing happened with Eddie Howe last season. They had an injury crisis after finishing 4th, and they were in the mid-table for most of the season. And they got players back, and they came back up to 7th. I think that we have this expectation of managers to be able to just, well, one, obviously, Ange has only been here for what, 2 or 3 windows now. We're in the middle of his
This is the third window. Fourth, isn't it? He had the summer, last winter, last
2
summer,
summers,
this
and
winter.
1 winter.
This is the 4th one.
Okay, this is the 4th. You cannot rebuild a squad, especially one that was built to play for Antonio Conte. I will not say anything further on his style of play. But you can't take a squad that was built for that and turn it into that in 3-4 windows. Partially because like you're like, oh, just go buy a backup who's basically Van de Ven. That player doesn't exist, and if they did, I can tell you what they're not playing. They're not going to play backup to Tottenham Hotspur. Hate to break it to you. They're not doing that. Just that player doesn't exist. Which is why I think we've taken the, smart approach of spending some more money on youth, and we've hit pretty well on our youth prospects. I think that an underrated part of why we struggled this season is the fact that we don't have Odobert a lot, and he was the player who was brought in to be the player who could pick the lock, and we don't have a player who can pick the lock right now on the wing. Having that player changes the way that we play drastically, and I think my opinion, is one of like the keys to making Ange ball click, because outside of Son maybe beating his man like once or twice a game, Brennan Johnson, as soon as he sees a defender, is turning back around. And like that's just the way that he plays, and like we get goals out of him, but he's not going to beat a man. You've got Son, who obviously we've talked about isn't 27-year-old Son, isn't 28-year-old Son. You've got the only person I think who can beat a man is Kulusevski, and he I think is better set in the middle, and also we have run him into the ground. Like you can see, Solanke is getting pulled out of position to help start attacks because we don't have anyone who can beat a man, and then he's not where he needs to be at the end of the attack. So like, I think that all of this to say that we need to be a little patient. This is not the final product. This isn't like the players are good, but we are still missing profiles that make this system great.
Yeah,
and for
that's
sure.
it. What do people? This is the bit I can't get my head around, and I'm starting to think it's just emotion bubbling over from human beings. It's just normal, and it being a lash-out way of handling those emotions because they can't handle the reality of the situation easily. so they had to express it somehow. But it's this whole, well, what, 3 days later, i.e. a couple of days of recovery and going to another game, they expect something to change. Like, no players have come back from injury or anything, but they expect something to change. Then you go, what do you think's going to change? What can change when a team's playing every 3 days and is in this doldrum of fatigue and injuries and all that stuff? What more can we do? Yes, the board could chuck him a couple of players and give some energy into the squad, but there's not much more he can do as a manager right now. And the answer typically, I should have tried Dorrington out. Like, we're really clutching at straws here, guys. If we really think that was going to move the needle, you can argue of past mistakes that have led to more fatigue now, but that's irrelevant to this moment in time because we can't do that now. And then the other one is you could have Sonny running off Solanke instead, and you're like, so you want to be more exposed in midfield where we're already losing the battle? Yeah, but we should just try it. That's just not moving the needle. It just sounds more like people are just like, I'm so angry that we're mid-table. I can't face the fact this season's a write-off rebuild, so I'm just going to scream about it.
But it's not, and that's the crazy part. It's not. We've talked for the last probably 17 years about how we would take a mid-table finish for a cup. And guess what we're doing this season? We're going to take a mid-table finish, and we are still in all 3 cups. We are prioritizing the cups. We've talked about wanting to prioritize the cups since at least, I don't know, since 2010, basically.
Since you've been born, Deej.
Yeah, since you were born, Deej. Oh, before you were born, since you were a twinkle in your daddy's eye.
Exactly. And like, now that we're actually doing it, it sucks. And part of it, I don't think, like, obviously you want to be the kind of squad with the kind of depth that can compete in the cups and the league. But we don't have that depth. We've got 3 injured center backs. We have an injured starting left back. We have our backup striker is injured, so he came back. Actually, didn't look terrible when he played.
Bentancur keeps doing silly things.
Bentancur seems to have someone has a voodoo doll of Bentancur and just keeps doing the silliest thing imaginable to it. And watching him, I feel so bad for that guy. For the stuff that's happening to him. I
think it's bad.
I'm talking about the injuries. The injuries. I feel bad.
Liverpool when he went, watch this. Have you seen what I can do? And then just randomly just jumped and headbutted the ground.
I think, Jim, coming back to your original point about what do people expect, and I think that there's such a swing between our performances, and this comes back to the goal difference point, right? So we will go out and smash a team, Man City 4-0, Aston Villa 4-1, West Ham, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll put on performances like we did against Liverpool in the first leg of the semi-final. And I think what is in the mind of a lot of supporters is, just do that.
Yeah.
You've done it before, just do that. Why are you doing this when you can do that?
That's so true,
and that there is a level of frustration there in all of us that is, well, last week you did that, and now this week you're not doing that. Why not? So why didn't we press Arsenal yesterday like we pressed Liverpool the week before?
Again,
because they're knackered. Because all of this. So there's all of this going on, but they must have been knackered against Liverpool, but they did it. Just do that. And it's like so easy to fall into that trap. But without the squad depth and with the injuries, you just cannot maintain a consistency of performance. Yeah. That's the problem.
We're in a storm at the moment, and the storm is multiple things, right? It could be wind, maybe rain, all that stuff in the form of injuries, fatigue, blah, blah, blah. And it's not going anywhere until February the 16th, so the 16th, right? We've got a game every 3 days until then. We've got players who are coming back end of Jan, but they won't be match fit probably for a week or two after that. So you've got a week's respite for that February 16th game. Okay, that's respite. I said that in a tweet. I got it wrong as well.
After two games in 3 days.
Yeah, exactly. So nothing can really change of significance aside from having a sudden flurry of players we sign, right? Which isn't going to happen unless Ange's, it's not kind of within Ange's control right now. If that happens, great. It's a boost.
Yeah.
So nothing can really change until that date. we're just in this storm. And I feel like there's got to be a bit of good old-fashioned stiff upper lip, like your adults deal with it. It's not going to get better. Stop expecting it to change.
Yeah.
Because you want it doesn't mean you can just have it. Because I want to have no mortgage, and it annoys me because I have to go to work every day. I can't just not have it. I can shout about it and vent about it at a coffee machine to someone, but I've still got it. And
but you paid off your last mortgage, so just do that.
Yeah, you just go do it again.
Just go do it again. You did it once, do it again.
Yeah, it's just so nonsensical, the cycle. It's just like people just desperate to drag people into the emotions of their mindset with all this.
Yeah.
And I think
and
the families are split.
Right? Because an emotion...
Yeah, I do get it.
Logic. We can come on here and we can talk logically about all of this, all of that, the systems, the injuries, the setup, the blah, 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 all the stats. And someone's going, yeah, but we're rubbish. And I hate it and I feel it and it's horrible. And emotion always beats logic. Logic never beats emotion. It's just that simple. You have an argument with a missus and you start getting logical and she's emotional. Guess what? You ain't winning, mate. You're sleeping in the spare room. That's the logic of the fact.
But it is true in the sense that, like, football just sums up the whole. Just break down what the hell are we doing?
It's illogical.
What are we doing? We're three people with lives that could be doing something seriously more productive, but we're sat.
And we're coming on here after a loss. There's some sort of catharsism, we reckon.
I've turned a room in my house into a podcast studio.
I've got two gnomes over here, look.
I've got like, 12-year-old would do that, put a bunch of shirts up behind them. I've got every book under the sun. I've gone out and got something to do.
Still got your George Michael poster up. And
for what game? All emotional because I'm in love with that stupid chicken.
So I work here in Basel, right? And we were in a meeting the other week, and we did this sort of like it was a project team coming together, and you do all of this sort of stuff, like you got an icebreaker, and you got to say a few things about it. And I did something about Tottenham, and one of the American guys went, "Hey man, why have you got a chicken on a beach ball as a mascot?" So now everybody's like, "Where's your chicken on a beach ball, mate?"
What did you have? When you first saw it, did you see a chicken on a beach ball?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, I knew it wasn't a beach ball. I was like, why is there a chicken on a ball? I still kind of have that question, to be fair. To be fair, but then the question is like, why is anyone anything?
We could have chosen dragons.
We could have chosen...
And then they didn't understand cockerel. It's a rooster, right?
Yeah. Why did we? Yeah, it's not exactly the most fearsome logo, is it? But for whatever reason, we are so emotionally connected to that stupid chicken.
That stupid chicken.
We spend
bloody chicken.
I think I probably do about 4 episodes a week at the moment. So over a year, I'm spending over 200 hours a year, nearly 300 hours a year, talking about Tottenham Hotspur on my computer because I'm emotionally obsessed with an emblem that Daniel Levy's marketing team tweak every year.
Yeah. And don't forget guys, your travel to the ground, from the ground, the time in the ground. On top of this,
you're talking months of my life every year.
Mate, the amount that I spend, the amount of time getting up at 4:30 in the morning to fly over for a game.
Deej getting up at 3 a.m. to watch a match or whatever. The Australian listeners we have on here getting up at
some of them watching our Sunday afternoon games at 4:30 in the morning on a Monday morning and then going out to work.
I think Ross is right from pod listeners.
What did Ross
the whole
say?
thing down. He just said fold the club.
Yeah, just fold it.
Just fold it. If everything just folded,
we would all be so much more productive.
We'd be richer.
Happier.
We'd have more time. We'd probably speak to our partners. Maybe. Yeah. We'd be able to do loads of stuff.
So, Jim, to bring us back onto topic, have we got any questions to answer, Jim?
We do, but we might need to do a Q&A pod when we get through them because we've got. Should we do our members ones?
Let's do the members ones. Let's do the members.
And if you do want to be a member on YouTube, it's $1.99 a month, and you can support the show.
Money well spent, according to our members.
Well spent. You get extra content as well. and access to a WhatsApp group to talk to us numpties all day.
Yeah.
Except, well, you guys aren't numpties, but anyway. We got Shafay. Can you tell me everything's going to be okay?
Everything is going to be
Everything's
okay.
going to be okay, my
Don't
friend.
you worry.
We will all die one day. And
Every
before
little
then,
Still won't have won the league. So
gonna
not worried
be
about it.
alright. I'm singing, don't worry about a thing, Shafay. Every little thing gonna be alright.
Shafay. It will be okay.
It'll
It
be
will be
alright.
fine. Listen, like I said in the group, right? This is going to go one of two ways. Either we're right, and next season it's going to be amazing, or we're wrong, and he gets sacked before Christmas next year. He's going to be here until the start of next season for sure, almost, unless we get dragged into a relegation, unless we go bottom three, then he's in trouble. But listen, they're the two options, I think. So let's stick by him. Everything's going to be all right, Chef. Don't worry about it.
Let's just have fun together. If you're finding all of it all a bit just like draining, just stick with us. We're all in this together, and we could be happy and laugh at it and wait for it to turn a corner. And I still believe it will, although Tottenham tends to just not turn at the corner and just crash into the wall instead. But let's get to the corner and see if we get it right. Sean, the Gooner Slayer, the
Should
legend,
have used him yesterday.
one, the only.
The only.
Most of us have never seen Spurs winning titles. So the
Mm.
question is this. That was it. That's all he said. Most of us have never seen Spurs win titles. Are we a big club who is massively underachieving? Or are we a small club overachieving? I believe how you answer this question makes all the difference to how you deal with the situations we find ourselves in.
I think that I kind of think we are neither, and that is the problem. We are not a small club. We're like the fifth biggest club in. I think here's where I
Ninth
think the
in the
issue
world
is.
by revenue.
We're
and
ninth
fifth in
here,
the Premier League.
ninth in the world, fifth in the Premier League. The problem is we don't get to play the rest of the world when we play football matches. We get to play 1, 2, 3, 4, and those guys are all still above us. You know, like
Yeah, so true.
so, like the problem is like let's look at the Bundesliga, for example. What's the fifth largest club in the Bundesliga by player value? Right now it's Stuttgart. Like
Okay.
that is us in the Bundesliga.
I was going to go Freiburg, but yeah, okay.
In I did some research for this. In Liga, it's Lille. In Spain, it's Bilbao. In Serie A, it's Napoli. Like Napoli is the only one of those clubs that have I think been. I guess Lille and Napoli have outperformed us, I would say. But I think Stuttgart and Bilbao, I don't think have been meaningfully more successful than us. I think Bilbao has won a couple domestic cups, and we've put ourselves in position to win those in the past, 15, however long it's been. I don't count. I'm sure if you want to figure it out, there are plenty of rival fans that have that memorized to the day, but not me. I don't, like we're not. The problem is that we're judging our success purely on trophy count, and I know that this is going to be an argument that is going to fall on deaf ears because I'm making it as a fan of a team that doesn't win trophies. But if you look at the level of relative success that we've had, especially since since Pochettino, we've been in or around the position that we kind of should be according to our club size in the Premier League. And it's weird because you see other clubs that are like smaller than us that are doing better because they're in other leagues that don't have the other Premier League clubs. Like the thing is it's not just that we're like the ninth biggest club in the world by
That's misleading then, because it's the market value is like inflated by our stadium.
Yeah, the market value is inflated.
And the TV money.
Man U are actually a bigger club than us who can spend more money, but they're below us on that table. We're actually
exactly
12.
Exactly. Like that's inflating us a bit. We're beginning to see like the stadium money come in, but it's still not fully there. Also, if I had to guess, I would say like the 12th to 15th team in the Prem is going to be a decent amount larger, have more spending power than the 12th to 15th team in any of these other leagues. So it's not just that we're competing against teams. It's not just that even though we're like the 9th biggest club in the world, we don't have the 9th most trophies. We're competing against higher, like a lot of those teams above us are in our league. And also the teams below us are a lot closer to us than maybe teams in other leagues might be.
And you know what? I think this whole thing has done us a favour in a weird way. I was falling out of love with, enjoying Spurs as one fan base since Poch's good era ended. And I think that was because when things went down after he left, and when he was with us and we had that bad season at the end, our expectations remained in line with when we were finishing second and challenging for the title, and we dropped off when that cycle had ended. And since then, nothing has been acceptable bar winning every single home game and only seeing a defeat as acceptable if it was against not even Man City away, but like not even Chelsea away because they're our rivals, not Arsenal away because they're our rivals. So pretty much Liverpool away was the only game each year you go like fair play. So it just became so just unreasonable almost. And like before Poch, we didn't have that. I remember Red Up and Roll, Red Up and Yol, it was just like we were all just one group, super happy, enjoying the ride. We went to every season thinking we were going to win the lot. We never did, but we were like, whatever, next season's going to be great. Let's enjoy the fact we got Jermaine Defoe and Robbie Keane and Dimitar Berbatov and Luka Modric and Gareth Bale, blah, blah. Have a laugh on the way. We'll smash West Ham at home and that'll be fun. It's just pure rage and hype. This whole thing, and I think Kane kept us always with the hope we could keep doing it. Then he's gone and we've gone, oh my God, we're actually mid-table now. But we've got the money to be 6th or 5th or 4th. But we're mid-table. This is Alex. I can't enjoy anything until we get... But I think this has leveled our expectations. I think next season we'll go in and go, you know what? If we do come 6th, it's an improvement. But I think before that would be completely unacceptable and out the window. So I think it has brought us a little bit back down to earth, where we are.
I wish that I could say that I think that's the case, but I definitely think, I mean, it's the case. I think, the problem is that before, when you're like, oh, we'll win the lot, and then you don't, and you're like, oh, well, that happened. Now you go and you're like, well, we're going to win the lot. Like, because next season, you know what? I'm probably going to be overly optimistic for our chances of winning the league, because I am every season, because it's kind of boring if you're not, like, especially if you're like a supporter of a team like Tottenham. Every team has like a goal that they want to get to. Like for some of them it's just like avoiding relegation. Like, I believe we can avoid relegation, even if like that's probably not going to happen for some of these teams that get brought up from the Championship. Some of these teams are like, we're going to make the European places, and they're probably not going to make the European places because there's like 7-8 teams that are basically have the GDPs of the value of small countries now, and it's insane to be able to compete with that. Shout out to Nottingham Forest for having a fantastically built squad and being able to compete at this level. Let's see if they can continue it for the rest of the season. But most of these teams aren't going to get there. Like, Burnley got there one season, and then they, now they're back in the Championship. So, and for Tottenham's at the level where our goal is, winning the league, winning the FA Cup, winning the Carabao Cup, winning the Europa League to get into the Champions League next season. So, and like, that's the problem is that when that doesn't happen, now we don't just have our mates with us where we're just laughing, saying, we'll get them next year. You open Twitter, and Twitter has the people who they have rival fans of every other team winding you up, because it's fun to hate Tottenham. Every other fan
up too when you're doing well.
Exactly. Let us not pretend like we don't wind Man United fans up.
Child Twitter.
Exactly.
I'll never change.
Yeah. Exactly. Like you have fans of rival teams, any team really. If there's a team that's struggling, you're gonna get taken shots at every time, even if you think it's like unfair. Even if it's unfair for the team to be taken shots at. I can't think of any particular example off the top of my head, but like, it's just exacerbating this like negative feeling of any loss. And I think that's kind of part of the reason why it feels so much harder. One, it is that we did taste the heights of like the Pochettino era, and we really probably should have come out of that with something. And it is disappointing that we didn't. But part of it is also that we are put in an environment where we are exposed to a lot more negativity, and because it comes not only from the fan base but also from I think the media is like, I don't want to be like the media, but like the article about unlucky timing for North London derby as depleted Arsenal look to take on Tottenham that hope to capitalize is an absolutely insane headline. Like, compared to, if you compare our injury records alone, like it like if you're reading that and you're like not like looking into it, you hear like these people on Talksport talking about how Ange like hasn't ever seen a football in his life actually, and how they actually play in a different way in Australia. He thinks the ball's upside down or something. I don't know.
Well, I've got on and that article. We all know it was deliberate, right? It was deliberately engineered to get the exact reaction it got. It was going to get thousands of people sharing it with their mates, being like, "We wanted," but to get on Talksport, I've been on twice, and I was on the way back from Liverpool. Do you know what I get on? Because it's a massive queue. When when you're in, some guy goes, "Hey, what do you want to say to presenters?" What I always say is, I think Spurs are going to win the lot this year. I think we're going to do the treble, and I don't think Jamie O'Hara knows what he's talking about. They fast track me to the front of that queue. They're like, "Get that idiot on air now."
Because
he's going to wind
Cundy and that lot are going to rip him apart.
Exactly. If I go on and go, I think there's actually an algorithm of several different reasons why we're in a situation, and it's not actually too bad.
Jamie and Jason, you're wonderful, and I love you loads.
I think this is a great show. I don't want to argue with anyone. You're great girls. They're just be like, "You're not coming on the show. You're just not going to drive." They need me to wind up the other callers enough to make more people want to ring up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they want.
And start tweeting and hashtagging and driving traffic and blah, blah, blah. That's what they want.
So when you go on Talksport, you lie of what you're going to say, and then you say something sensible and stuff to go on. But they put me on the quiz, and then they just went, "Who was the 7th goal scorer for shots outside the box? Goals outside the box?" I went, "Harry Kane." Wrong. Actually, our first ever video on this YouTube channel, you can scroll back. This was I opened this page 10 years before we started podcasting. It was an old YouTube channel. It's me arguing with Adrian Durham on Talksport, and it's got 50,000 views. You can find it on there. And I call myself Jock because I'm at uni. I had too much time on my hands. 15 years ago.
There you go.
Anyway, last question quickly, guys, from Rick. And then, by the way, if you sent questions in on Twitter, what I'll do tomorrow is when I'm out walking, I will do the vlog style thing and just do a 10-minute one and go over your questions, 10-15 minutes, and we'll go over your questions. Don't want to miss out on anyone. Time to write it. But Rick says, is it time to relieve Son of the captaincy and move him to being more of an impact player? If so, does Ange point Kulu?
I don't think that there's a point in moving captaincy midway through a season. I think if you want to do it next season, yeah, I think, but I don't know. I think part of it is that like the vice captains that he's appointed have been hit or miss with availability. I think that I kind of lean towards wanting my captain to be the rock at the back. I mean, obviously, like a goalkeeper or a center back, like that's kind of, or maybe even like a defensive midfielder. So that's not to say Kulu shouldn't be the captain by any means. I just think that to be honest, I really don't think the captaincy matters that much. I think that no matter who has the armband on, you know which players you're going to listen to, you know which players you look up to, you know which players you respect. I do think that despite the drop in form, I do think that Player is still Son for most of the squad. So I don't think that there's necessarily a reason or an issue with him being the captain. And that also I think that the question is more geared towards, should Son become a spot starter? And to that I say, if it's not Son, it's Timo Werner.
Yeah, I tend to agree with DJ. I think the captaincy in football is a little bit overrated. A decent team has leaders all over the pitch, and whether you have a leadership group or not, true leaders become true leaders. The cream rises to the top, and a good team is full of leaders. So I think that the captain is maybe a little bit of a focal point for off the pitch stuff, but I don't think it makes that much difference on the pitch.
The job as well as like, it's not about all the on-pitch stuff. When you listen to like Peter Crouch's podcast, it's about
Yeah.
who's
Sorting
the
out the
sensible
tickets.
one.
Sorting out the tickets.
Well, I think it's kind of like the manager says do all this stuff,
Yeah.
and then they're all a bunch of mates, and they go off and behind closed doors and only do some of that stuff. The captain's got enough respect from the room to say,
Oi.
we're doing this stuff. And as your peer, we're doing this stuff, which is very different from your boss saying, go do that stuff. But just a little bit trivia to finish on. Who was the youngest ever captain at Tottenham Hotspur, and how old were they when they wore the armband? No Googling, folks.
I would never Google. It's a good question. Do you mind if I ask if it's recent?
I'm not going to give you anyone any clues. You've just got to, I'm going to give you both. Right. You're going to say a name. Ready?
Steve Perryman.
So, Dij?
I'm going to go with Hugo, I guess. I don't think that's right, but I can't think of a better answer.
Harry Kane, aged 21 years old. He captained us in our 0-0 game against Burnley.
Okay.
I feel like I should have known that.
I feel like you should have known that, Deej.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
That stat is definitely in your wheelhouse as you
That
go.
that is in my wheelhouse. Definitely impacts the outcomes of the game.
Here's my hot take. That will be broken in 2 years' time by Archie Gray.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that was
21
coming.
and a little bit less. 3 years by Archie Gray.
Yeah, if we keep losing players like we have this season, he might be
2.5.
the only player on the pitch for us by the end of the season, so
Yeah.
he might have to get it by default.
There you go.
Well,
that was a philosophical episode, I feel, more than anything.
Yeah, I feel like I've got out of my system there, Jim.
Yeah, and you just got nerfed by the YouTube algorithm in the last
does
bit.
the S word get us nerfed? Does it?
I'll cut it
We're going to
out.
have to bleep that out then, because I thought it was only the F word and the C word got us bleeped. I've been really good on those tonight.
I'll
I
cut
didn't
it out.
realise the S word did.
We seem to be on the target list at the moment, where it's just
God.
realising
What you're
once,
saying
twice
is I'm
every
on the target list. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
I'm going to remove. Right,
Okay.
Spurs, boys.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.